Hello, everyone. Welcome to our program. Hi, Stephanie. And hi, everybody who has joined us here. I think we have a pretty good sangha of about 10 people. And who knows, more might show up as we move along. But it's nice to see your faces and your names over here in the waiting room and in the gallery. Okay. This is Finals and the Finish Line. We are here to welcome Jonathan Foust, who is one of the foremost teachers of embodied practices and mindfulness in America. Jonathan is a dear friend and has had quite a distinguished career. He was president of Kripalu Center before coming down to Washington, D.C. to lead workshops and sanghas all throughout the city and in Virginia and elsewhere. So we're just extremely lucky to have him with us today. And we're going to talk a little bit about stress at the end of the semester. For those of us who are faculty, how to find the ways to help release stress in our students and in our classes and in ourselves. And also, if you're students, how to watch for these signs of burnout and exhaustion, and to find practices that will help you release them. So, Jonathan, welcome.
It's great to be here. Really honored to be here. Thank you, David. And good to see you all. I can see some really cool people and see some really cool names too.
Jonathan, I've explained to you a little bit about our initiative here. It's called the Mindfulness Initiative at AU, and what we're doing is bringing people from different disciplines together to talk about the ways that mindfulness specifically applies to their own practice. And you're the final presenter of the year, and as a mindfulness practitioner, we hoped that you could come and just sort of give us some tricks of the trade and some clues about how to deepen and widen our practice.
Delighted, absolutely delighted. You know, the thing is, stress is everywhere. Stress is part of life, and at the same time, it's really simple how we can sort of like break that stress cycle. And I'm really happy to share. I'm kind of a sort of a hacker, practical tips kind of person. So I'm really looking forward to sharing some of the things that work for me. And then we can just try them on, and you can evaluate for yourself whether whether they might be of some use for you.
Wonderful, thank you. So what we thought, Jonathan and I have had a discussion about this ahead of time. What we thought we would do is begin with a meditation and some guided practice, and then talk a little bit about those tricks of the trade and those tips. And then after a discussion, conversation between Jonathan and myself, to just open it to questions to the group. We have a fairly big group, so I think too big to go around and have people introduce themselves, but for a good portion of this, at the end, there'll be a chance for everybody to chime in and ask some questions. So Jonathan, I leave it to you to get us started.
Well, if it's okay, I'd like to actually start off with a couple tricks of the trade that involve mindful movement. You know, as they say, your issues are in your tissues. You know, whenever you feel any emotional stress, any mental agitation, there's a corresponding resonance in the body. And there are just a couple of things that you can do that I find to be really, really helpful. One of them is combating what's called tech neck, you know, which is when you are chronically on a device where your head begins to come forward. And the other one is really powerful for resetting your posture if you're working at a desk for a long period of time. So, but before we do that, I'd like to lead a very, very short reflection, kind of a before and after check-in. It's something that some people call quad check, sort of checking in 4 different quadrants of your being. So if you like, you can just close your eyes. This will be just for a few moments. And you might take 3 slow breaths. Just slow down the breath and notice how that begins to bring your attention from the outer world to heightening your awareness of the inner world. And you might just check in and sense, well, what is the quality of feeling in your body right now? Sensations fall into three categories. There's the sensations that are unpleasant. You might just notice, are there any areas that feel tight or congested or stagnant or radiating? Are there any sensations that feel pleasant? Any sense of ease or kind of free-flowing quality of just feeling radiantly okay? The third category is the neutral sensations, kind of neither pleasant nor unpleasant. The next area is just this sense, what is the quality of mind? If you were to describe the quality of your mind in a word or two, what word would you use? And the quality of the heart, sense of emotional well-being, just noticing whatever first impressions arise. And the fourth category is somewhat ephemeral, but you might think of it as the quality of presence, or the quality of spirit right now. And then if you like, you can open your eyes. The first series of movements are very, very simple, but what they do is they bring in a little lubrication into the neck. So what you'll want to do is to, I find it helpful to bring your thumb and forefinger right under your collarbones. And then just very gently let your head drift a little bit to the left and to the right. There's no forcing, but just check out what is the range of motion, just the natural range of motion here. You may notice one side may feel a little bit more open than the other. The next series here is, if you can imagine, I like to actually, you can bring your fingers right under your chin and then glide your chin forward, keeping on that same plane, and then pull the chin back like you're trying to make your face look large. So you're gliding backward and forward. Again, there's no forcing, you're just sensing what's here. And then coming to the center point, and then you can lift the chin up toward the ceiling. And then keeping your neck lengthened, bring the chin down toward your chest. You can do this with the breath to help you bring in a little more attention. You're lifting the chin, and with the neck tall, bringing the chin down toward the chest. And then returning again to the neutral position. And here, keeping your shoulders as level as you can, invite the left ear down toward the shoulder. And again, just sensing the range of motion. And then just coming to the neutral position and just, again, just sense the feeling in the neck. Now, this next exercise takes about 60 to 90 seconds, and it's a very powerful of resetting your posture. What happens, of course, is there are these intrinsic muscles that hold you upright, and they get tired. When that happens, inevitably, you're going to slump, and the muscles across the front of your chest get chronically shortened, and the muscles along the back of the shoulders, the back of the neck, they get chronically lengthened. This is a pretty cool way to reset it. So we're going to go from here into a segue into our meditation. So what you want to do is you might want to just reach your arms up overhead and just alternate as you reach up to the left side and the right side. And then very gently bring your elbows so they're just about parallel to your shoulders, and then turn your palms so they're facing inward. So your palms are facing your ears. And if you like, you can draw your navel in toward the spine. That's going to activate the core muscles. And as you're ready, begin to bring your shoulder blades close together. So you're contracting the shoulder blades. Part of the key here now is to breathe. So you might want to inhale to the count of 4 or maybe even 5. And then exhale to the count of 4 or maybe 5. And just for the next little while, about maybe 5 or 6 breaths, you're going to match the length of the in-breath with the length of the out-breath while you're contracting the shoulder blades. You might even see if you can pull the shoulder blades down just a little bit. Now, as you hold this contraction, what's happening is you're taking the slack out of the muscles that are chronically lengthened along the backs of the shoulders, the back of the neck. And as you breathe, and as you feel that expansion of the breath drawn up under your collarbones, you are gently lengthening the muscles that get chronically shortened. It's about 60 to 90 seconds, and I'm estimating that's about 2 more breaths. Long, full, slow, and deep. You might sense if you can contract the shoulder blades just a little bit more. And then once again, you can reach the arms up overhead. Stretch up to the left side, stretch up to the right side. And we're going to do one of my favorite hacks for moving into meditation now. You can bring your palms so they're right about at shoulder level, facing inward. And when you're ready, if you like, you can close your eyes. Many meditation techniques start with concentration as a way to gather your attention. And this meditation, there's a segue into meditation, takes maybe just 2 minutes, but it can be a very powerful way to cultivate absorption. So if you like, you can relax your fingers. And now relax your thumbs and just feel the space between the fingers and thumbs. Let your face now be expressionless. And let all of your attention flood into the palms, the fingers, the thumbs, the backs of the hands. You might even sense here a sense of tingling or pulse or subtle energy. And imagine now if someone was watching you, they could barely perceive movement. And as you're ready, let your hands begin an ultra slow motion descent down toward your lap. If someone was observing you, they could barely perceive movement, and let the anchor or the focus of your attention be on the micro movements of your hands as they flow through space. You might again soften the muscles of the face, relax the inside of your mouth. And when the mind comes in with commentary, as it naturally will, just come back to this sense of the ultra slow motion movement of the hands. And if your hands have already come to rest, you might just keep your attention there. Notice the effect on the mind. Deeply relaxed and at the same time alert. If you like, you can continue with the slow motion movement of the hands, or if you like, you might let your hands come to rest. And we'll explore a little more of just sensing from the inside out. And the body only lives in the here and now. the more you can feel, the more you arrive. Feeling the inside of the mouth, you might sense if you could relax your tongue. Let your tongue relax and fill your lower jaw. Is it possible to relax the root of your tongue down into your throat? You might imagine your arms like heavy drapes hanging from your shoulders and sensing down through the elbows and down through the wrists. Sensing again from the inside out, the palms, fingers, and thumbs. Could you soften or relax through the lower back and the buttocks? And perhaps over the next 3 exhalations, how much more could you relax and soften and feel in the belly? Feel the soles of the feet and the heels. And in these remaining minutes of this meditation, you might inquire, what could relax or soften or let go right now? And can you sense what some call taking the seat of the witness? Who you are as the observer of everything that is changing. You might take just a few moments now to explore letting go of any sense of doing. And sensing what it means to simply be, to rest in presence. You might very gently now deepen the breath. Perhaps let your head drift a little bit to the left and right, sensing the movement from the inside. We'll just do this brief check-in before we close. As you again sense, what is the quality of feeling in your body right now? Has anything shifted? If you were to describe the quality of mind, how might you describe it in a word or two? And the quality of heart, quality of emotion. And however you may sense it, what is the quality of presence right now? Again, you might deepen your breath. Let your body move and stretch in any way that feels good for you. You might like to reach your arms up overhead once again. Let out any sounds. You're on mute. You can let out any sounds you want. And welcome back.
Jonathan, thank you. I'm looking at myself in the camera right now, and I can actually see a difference, and just everything sort of relaxed and shifted as a result of that. And so the quad check, just to review, the quad check is the quality of heart, the quality of emotions, the quality of presence, and the quality of mind.
And the quality of body.
Quality of body, of course.
And body presence, if you will. Yeah.
Today happens to be the birthday of Herb Benson, who wrote the Relaxation Response, and he died last year in his late 80s. But you and I have been discussing him. He's a very important figure for me because his book was the first little piece of literature that I read about the science of these techniques. What you said yesterday was that we've scienced the heck out of these things, and what did you mean by that? Just to get our discussion started.
I find it so interesting. I mean, I think that meditative traditions have been part of humanity from the very beginning. Maybe just staring into a fire or whatever. But if we take it from, let's say we take it from the age of the Buddha, 2,500 years ago, he developed these practices that were quite profound, not only for reducing stress, but for illuminating the heart and mind and seeing more clearly into the nature of reality. So then news spread as to this technique because people's lives are being changed. And it spread via the trade routes where communication would happen. So this meditative practice went down into the jungles, to the islands in Southeast Asia, where it retained the very, very orthodox. If you practice in Southeast Asia, you're pretty much practicing as the Buddha taught. But it also went up into China, where it fused with Confucianism and took on that quality. It went up to Tibet and it fused with the animistic culture there and took on all the incredible trappings of Tibetan Buddhism. It went to Korea and it took on the practice of Kensho, kind of fierce insight, and went to Japan and it took on this quality of Zen, and it came to the West and we did double-blind studies. We did functional MRIs. We did, how can we duplicate this? What parts of the brain actually light up when you do this particular technique? Can we corroborate that? We scienced the heck out of it. And the fascinating thing is, because we have this, and I like to say, if mindfulness was a drug, it would be considered the miracle drug of this era. And it's corroborated in science now. So now we have the Marines who meditate together as a unit. We have insurance companies underwriting meditation programs because there's a cost benefit in it. We see it coming into schools and so forth. So I just love how this pretty simple practice has really transformed our culture in a really powerful way. And Herbert Benson was really, he was the first guy in 1972 to actually study what happens when you do these techniques. And we know all about the stress response. When you're under stress, the blood is shunted away from your belly, your eyes dilate, the capillaries dilate, so you're ready to fight or flight. But what he noticed was doing just a few simple things. Make sure you're not disturbed. Choose a mental technique. And when the mind wanders, bring it back. The term he coined, which is the relaxation response. That different hormones, different neuropeptides begin to flow. And what's very interesting is, if you ever notice when you're meditating, sometimes your stomach starts burbling. That's the relaxation response. When the blood actually starts flowing back into your belly, so it can start digesting again. which is why on meditation retreats, it's really quite entertaining just listening to all the gurgling going on in the room.
Well, I have a friend. His name's Parker Palmer. You might know Parker, but he talks a lot about burnout. What occurs in the body when we experience what we call burnout. He says that burnout is when we're being asked to give more than we have, and we try to give anyway. And that feeling comes of it's like a freeze response of just numbness and exhaustion. Are there any techniques that can help with the more cognitive kind of tiredness? So we've looked at the ways that our bodies can suddenly relax, but what about cognitive exhaustion, which is something that all of us in academia, students and faculty alike, have experienced at one point or another?
Yeah, well, the overall approach that I find is just the whole concept of your cup full and overflowing. There's that wonderful phrase from the Bible that says, my cup runneth over. And I think, well, what does that actually mean? And those times when you feel so good, you can't not be nice, you just feel so good. You start a conversation with a checkout person in the grocery store, or you magnanimously wave someone across. No, you first, And I like to think of spiritual practice, if you will, or just skillful means in life is filling your cup. Fill your cup to overflowing. And life is very, very different. As some people say, spend less time managing your projects and more time managing your energy. And I certainly know that for myself after a good night's sleep. There's just that mental clarity is so helpful. I get so much more done. I get more done in 3 hours than I would all day if I was really exhausted.
You're saying something interesting here, which is that when experiencing burnout, there's a kind of pivot to fill something up rather than try to empty something out, or to create boundaries to block off the world from coming in. How do we make that pivot? How do you make that pivot?
Usually it's when the suffering gets bad enough. There's that wonderful feedback loop from the universe to let you know when you're out of balance, called pain. And it's really, the more we can sensitize ourselves to the signals, because there are signals that arise from our body that we're all really, really good at overriding them. And when I think of that, it's like, the more we can sensitize ourselves to that innate intelligence of the felt sense of the body, what it's like when you get a very faint signal from your body saying, be really, really good idea to go to bed right now. And the mind says, let me just finish this chapter. It overrides it. Or you're really excited about going out to dinner, and you get a very faint signal from your body saying, I've just reached the perfect amount of nutrition. And the mind says, well, we haven't even looked at the dessert cart yet. So it really is that element of how the mind overrides this innate intelligence. And why I find some of the most essential techniques are these embodied techniques. Mm-hmm. Because as we really cultivate that listening, there's a very interesting thing to reflect on. It's the possibility that the body doesn't lie. And when we really listen inward, what does the body need right now? Or what am I actually feeling? And we really listen deeply. The information we get can be tremendously valuable and incredibly difficult when we are trying to accomplish things with our minds.
That's wonderful, Jonathan. Do you want to go into a short meditation now, or shall we turn to questions? And
if there are any questions, I think I can go on and on all day. I love this stuff. So if there are any questions or observations or comments, that would be fantastic. And if not, we can do we can try some other practices.
See, Kendra just raised her hand, and then Kathy. Kendra, would you like to?
Yeah, that was wonderful. First of all, my hands have never moved that slowly through the air, and I felt every change. I felt like my hands were completely different by the time they reached my lap, and I think that changed everything in me. So I just want to thank you for that. And my question is, we have this culture of, I'm thinking of like Olympic swimmers or something, where you always have to push yourself to get better and harder. And that's really valued to it. It's not even just achievement. It's just what we believe, that if we don't try harder, we have to be more than we are all the time. There's a certain thought about that. And when you were just talking about the mind, the exhaustion of the mind, I'm just wondering how you would respond to that tension. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, first of all, great observation and great question. So the slow motion movement, it's one of my favorite things for practice, because it's about coming into the present moment, and it's about cultivating that sense of absorption, and it's kind of an artificial practice, but when you do it, you're giving the mind a job to do. One of the things I think maybe Herbert Benson talked about this, when you're sort of training your mind in meditation, think of what it's like to train a puppy. If you've ever trained a puppy and you say sit, puppy has no idea what you're talking about. But with patience and persistence, the puppy will sit for longer and longer periods of time. But I find like doing the slow motion is it's like throwing a stick for the puppy. It's okay, mind, track this. And that sense of calming can be so powerful. But to get to your second question, it's absolutely so that we live in a competitive culture. We live in a culture that is telling us on and over that there's something else out there that's finally going to complete you. If you just get this done, then you're going to feel better. And as we know, that's a really not a great way to live. And yet we're all trapped in it. We're all trapped in it. So what I find is this is an interesting model, I find. And when you think about how you focus your attention, and think of it in 4 quadrants. The first is all of the unexpected things that show up in your life. The phone call you have to respond to, the email that needs attention right away. And everything that is it just shows up. It's life that shows up that needs your immediate attention. The second quadrant is everything you said you were going to do. And that's your to-do list. And I don't know about you, but my to-do list is always longer than what is reasonable, which again reinforces that sense of there's always more than I can get to. The third quadrant is where you're stepping back a little more. And you can think of that as like future planning, where you're asking yourself, is what I'm doing this week leading to where I want to be 10 years from now? And the fourth quadrant has to do with presence. And that is not just meditation or yoga. It's poetry, it's art, it's being outside, it's having a wonderful meal with someone you love. It's going for a walk in nature. And what I find is every second I invest in the quadrant number 4 informs all the other quadrants. And if I don't pay attention to quadrant number 4, I end up living in quadrant number 1, where all I am is a reaction machine. So I think that's the beauty of mindfulness practices. And again, it's not limited to formally sitting for 20 minutes with your eyes closed. It's really about that sense of really deep inner nurturing. Because when you really are living from that place, everything is different, I find. Does that help, or any other clarifications? Or
No, that was great. It's true. when you know that's true, but you get into reaction machine. I like that because you're just like, let me just, as soon as I get all this done, then I'm free or something. And but it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you become more and more that person. I mean, I feel that for myself. That's called being really responsible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Exactly. It's like, again, bringing it back to Buddhist philosophy, like part of the Buddha's enlightenment was like, oh my God, everyone is looking for happiness in exactly the wrong way. We're looking for it out there. That something out there is going to complete us. And when we can actually tap into that sense of really that deep presence and joy that comes out of the moment, the nurturing we get from that is so profound, and our life begins to change. Thank you.
Did you have a question? Kathy, did you have a question, or
No.
I saw a hand.
Well, David, I'm curious. You've been in this mindfulness gig for a good while. Your practice has run deep. What do you find helpful when you encounter the stress that comes with a deadline or needing to create content, under time pressure? What works for you?
That's a question I probably try to answer every day. My job, as my colleague Stephanie would probably agree, my job involves a lot of quick responses. The administrative part of the job involves emails and constant questions and requests that are all, quote unquote, time sensitive, meaning urgent to the person who's sending the email. And then on the other side, there's this long view that has to do with teaching and what you want to accomplish over an entire semester. And I find that this practice, which I started truly seriously about 3 years ago, and first ventured into about 20 years ago, has helped me so much to just let go of the incredible demands that my mind can put on my body, as though my mind were in charge, as though my mind were different from my body, separate from my body. So slowly I went from this dualistic kind of relationship to something that's closer to non-dualism and more holistic. All I can say is that I have to constantly put it into perspective and say, I can do as much as is possible in this moment, and the rest will get done. And I will likely forget a lot of the small details that I'm really fretting over and stressing over right now. That actually gives me incredible comfort. My own forgetfulness has been a source of great comfort to me, because I just know that most of this will be gone. Standing in line, waiting for something, it'll be gone in a couple of weeks. So why not just try to enjoy myself while I'm having that experience? Simplistic, but it's effective for me.
Well, and what I find is the most powerful things are almost always the most simple things. In mindfulness world, we talk about like the power of the pause. Just one breath can create a shift. And also the power of questions. And one thing I find really, really helpful is there's just a question that I use, or I just ask myself, and I sort of like it's a fill in the blank. The most important thing right now is, and just sort of like listen and let my intuition fill in the blank. And that's been really helpful for kind of sharpening my executive function. When I have, 15 things to do, and to kind of get that sense of what's really aligned right now. The other technique that I use is because so much of it is around managing our attention. you know, when we talk about how you can use your attention like a laser, get very, very one-pointed, like that slow motion micro movements of the hands. And we can also have the capacity to let our attention be, you know, wide open. So what I find, if you're familiar with the Pomodoro technique, I use that all the time. So Pomodoro is Italian for tomato. This was created by, I think it was a law student in Italy. And he noticed that when he would set his kitchen timer, which was in the shape of a tomato, for 25 minutes and worked exclusively, focused for 25 minutes, and then he took a forced 5-minute break, his productivity went through the roof. And so there's actually brain science behind it, that, you know, you work very, very focused for 25 minutes, you have a forced break, and the forced break is really important because some of them are really in a flow, like, let me keep working and I'll work for another 20, and I have some mental fatigue. If I do that 25 minutes, a forced 5-minute break, then back for 25 minutes, and do that for a few rounds, I have found that has really helped me to kind of sharpen my attention when I really need it, kind of put on the blinders. And sometimes it's staggering what happens when I can use that kind of focus and concentration for short bursts.
This is a a method that I think anyone who has had to grade papers over long stretches of time have learned on their own. Everyone comes to the Pomodoro method on their own because you've got to take a break, or you begin to, you know, write gibberish onto the students' papers.
Exactly.
In the mindfulness techniques that I've been studying and learning, something very interesting came up once in a meditation where a teacher had us ask ourselves, as our hands were at rest on our laps, and the teacher had us ask ourselves, how do you know that you have hands? This question of where is the presence in your body, and when you're not using your hands, or your hands are just floating in the air, moving at this, you know, this ultra slow level, how do we know that we have hands? And you always do. You can feel the energy in this hand, and you can even make it jump into that hand. What is the benefit of that kind of reflection in bringing us back home into our bodies?
You know, as I see it, it's really learning how to shift out of the linear and sort of like into like the nonlinear. You know, one thing, you know, Herbert Benson, as we both have in common, studied transcendental meditation, you know, which was sort of like the that's what I learned when I was 13. And I actually was very involved with transcendental meditation, and they have a very interesting phrase that they kind of repeat over and over again, which is, the more dynamic your rest, the more dynamic your activity. You know, and it's so, again, it's so simple, but the more dynamic your rest, the more dynamic your activity. And what I find is those kind of questions, which it's almost, they don't really have a linear answer, but that, you know, that question takes you into a deep sense of removing yourself from the linear rational mind, which does three things really, really well. It compares and it judges and it figures things out. But what I've noticed is when my intuition is flowing, or when I'm in a creative flow, or when I'm just kind of aware of like the mystery, there are three things that are not happening. I'm not trying to figure things out. I'm not trying to compare, and I'm not judging. That's why I think those kinds of questions, you know, like the breaks that we can take of consciously stepping out, can re-inform and re-inspire us, and give us a lot more firepower when we need it mentally.
With the relaxation response, for those of you who don't know, it's a very interesting technique. It involves, since he studied TM, it involves a mantra of some kind, or a prayer, or a repeated word. And then, what did he say? Setting aside intruding thoughts so that you can focus on the mantra. And one of the things that appeals to me about it is that it's so similar to writing poetry, because as a poet, what you find is that you need content, but you also need some kind of distracting feature. And the distracting feature in writing a poem often involves the form of the poem or the way that you're arranging it on the page, something that has you thinking about a background music while you're also generating content. And using this effect of the background music, this distracting principle, something more associative, something less linear, something less judging, evaluative, explaining, rises to the surface, which is the real you. It's that witness presence that you were talking about at the beginning, which to me has become the goal in the writing. I didn't know that I was doing that all along, but I was kind of teaching myself as I went to access that part of myself that, if you were a Freudian, it would be the part that rises out during those associative practices on the couch. But for the poet, it's having this form that keeps your eyes here while something else much more intelligent and wise rises to the surface over here.
That is so cool. Einstein said no problem was ever solved in the same consciousness that created it. So whenever we want to solve a problem, make a shift, we have to shift our consciousness. And that's where all of these skillful means of mindfulness are so powerful. Because when you can use that technique as a way to make that shift, then you access flow in a really powerful, dynamic way. And what I really love about these practices is you don't have to sit for 45 minutes. It doesn't hurt. But I was once teaching at the World Bank doing a series, and one of the administrators of the World Bank, very kind of brusque woman, she said, I like the class, but I have no time to meditate. I said, well, do you have 10 minutes a day? She goes, no. I said, well, do you have 5 minutes? She goes, no, I don't have 5 minutes. So we talked about mindful moments, which is when your computer's booting up, you have to kind of close your eyes and take a few breaths. When you have a meal, like just close your eyes, just take a few bites, just nice and slow. Build in little rituals, where you can just bring in a little bit of this body awareness. And then the next week she came in and she goes, I figured it out. And I said, wow, what are you doing? She goes, I have an electric tea kettle. And from when I plug it in to when it whistles, I watch the breath, I scan my body. It's great. And I thought, that's fantastic. And then later on in the day, I realized it kind of depends on how much water you put in the kettle. But nonetheless, it's the little things that we can bring in that help us to just shift out of that sense of comparing, figuring it out, doing grim quality of mind back into that sense of presence. And there are a couple little breathing techniques that I could share that might be helpful too, if there's time. Should we maybe do a little something just experiential, or?
Please.
Cool. We've got a little bit of time left. So there's a whole science of breathing and how breathing can really help to shift your experience. And I remember Jean Houston had this line from way back in the 70s. She's predicted there'll be this discovery of ancient future technologies. And I thought, what a cool phrase. But now, every now and then, I run across an article that says, this breathing technique will shift your state in moments, and it's got this scientific name, and it's this, this is ancient breathing technique that's been around for thousands of years. But one technique, which is a really helpful way, again, it takes maybe 30 seconds, is just a really powerful way to sort of like energize and kind of relax. And what this is, it's a 2-part inhalation and then an exhalation through the mouth. And I like to do it just starting off by bringing your thumb and forefinger just below your collarbones. And you breathe in through the nose. It goes like this. You breathe in through the nose. So as you do this with a two-part inhalation, in particular on the second inhalation, sense if you can draw the breath up under your collarbones. That's going to fill the upper lobes of your lungs. And the exhalation is as long as it takes for the exhalation to move out. Let's just try it together, and let's do it 7 times, and we'll just see what happens. So when you're ready, and just relax, close your eyes. Just feel the imprint. Again, you might just sense the quality of presence. The second technique, which I'd just like to share with you, again, just takes a minute or two, but it can have a really helpful way of sort of shifting your state. The new name is called coherence breathing. Again, it's a classic yogic meditation technique. But again, really, really powerful. It helps to regulate your nervous system. It helps to create a really profound sense of inner balance. If you think about times when you're really upset, chances are your breath will be ragged, irregular. Think about times when your breath is slow and smooth. Chances are you're feeling more calm. So as you invoke this technique, you can actually invoke the state. So if you like, you can close your eyes. And in essence, what you'll be doing is you're going to, on the next inhalation, breathe in slowly to the count of 4. And then exhale slowly to the count of 4. So you're consciously matching the length of the in-breath with the length of the out-breath. So all of your attention, your concentration is in counting the breath. It may take a little while to kind of feel your rhythm here. You can also begin to sense on the exhalation if there's anything that might soften a little bit on the out-breath. And over time, as you get more relaxed, you might naturally want to increase the length of the breath, maybe even stretching it to 5 or maybe 6. And we'll just practice together for the next minute. Now for the next 3 rounds of breath, how intimately can you feel the breath on the inside? Can you smooth out the breath? And now on the next exhalation, let the technique fall away. Just relax and feel. And feel the imprint. Just sense what may have shifted in the last just 2 minutes of mindful breath. And now you might very spontaneously complete the following phrase. The most important thing for me today is. If no words come naturally, you might just find some words that resonate for you. And then when you're ready, you can gently deepen the breath and let your body move and stretch any way that feels good for you. Might take a moment just to look around at the quality of light, the space around you. One of the great things about the coherence breathing is no one has to know you're doing it. You can do it in meetings, you can do it when you're standing in line, you can do it when you're driving the car. That's one of the beauties of really kind of training ourselves how to take that pause and really just come into the present moment and refresh.
What I love about it, and what I love about the question too, is that it presumes, rightly, I think, that we already know what the most important thing is, that we don't need to go out there for the teachings either, that they're already in us, and that our body, in line with our mind, knows what that next important thing is to do.
And what's fascinating is all these traditions, classic traditions, mystical traditions, is exactly what they all say. Kingdom of heaven is found within. All you seek is found within. As the Buddha said, within this body, everything you want to know about the nature of reality is right here. And that's sort of the magic of these simple techniques. They not only help us be more effective in the world, but they actually can help us see more clearly.
Yeah. And Rilke said, we know little, but that we must do the difficult thing. And what I hear is that the difficult thing sometimes at these moments of burnout is to rest. The difficult thing is to take the pause. And that's the thing that your body tells you in those moments of deep presence and understanding.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful phrase. And how I translate that is, in the busyness of life, with all the barrage of things wanting attention, is kind of the art of saying no. No, I'm not going to stay up late and watch that movie, even though my mind wants to, is to recognize that every no has a yes. And so quite often when I'm saying no to a distraction, what I'm saying yes to is some form of self-care and self-nurturing.
Jonathan, thank you so much. I can't think of a better way to end this season of talks and meditations. It's just wonderful to see your face and to have you share your wisdom with us.
Oh, so good to be with you. And may you find happiness in the midst of busyness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.